Hey everybody, this is Kevin Martin on Sonic Perspectives.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another interview of Sonic Perspectives. I'm Rodrigo, and my guest today is Kevin Martin from Candlebox. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're here to talk about the new album, The Long Goodbye. It's going to be the last one from Candlebox. First of all, tell me about the decision to close this chapter of your life. Why now?
Well, it all kind of stems from COVID. Being home for 20 months with my wife and my son made me realize how much I actually missed them when I was gone.
Right.
You get so used to the life you live on the road, it becomes, it's very selfish to be in a rock and roll band if you have family because it's difficult to make time for everybody, let alone do your job and have a career.
Yeah.
And I think that just by being home in that environment made me realize how much they meant to me and how much I'd actually missed of their lives and my relationship with them. And that was kind of the catalyst for it. Then touring in 2021 and 2022, that really made me realize how much I was experiencing kind of a sense of, I don't want to say, what's the word? I felt very alone because I had lost kind of that connection with my relationships with my wife and my son, realizing that I didn't have that on the road and I didn't have that kind of consistency or that closeness. Even though I was with the guys that I love playing music with and touring and playing for adoring fans or whatever, it made me realize that I really just needed to be at home. And I didn't love the music as much as I thought I did. And that's a strange place to be. Nobody wants to be a musician that phones it in, of course, but sometimes you get to a point where you feel like that's all you can do because you're burned out or you're exhausted or whatever. And we have 5 in a rows on tour a lot, so it's that emotion of feeling alone is something that can be very, very heavy on the heart.
Right. Oh, I bet. Yeah. And I have to applaud you on that decision because a lot of musicians I know refuse to retire. They end up becoming a parody of themselves at some point, which is kind of sad,
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're already on tour with Three Doors Down and a few headlining shows as well. How's the tour going so far?
It's been amazing. We're having an absolute blast out here. And I think it's because we know it's the last hurrah,
Right.
So we're putting everything that we can into the show. Our own headline shows, we're playing, about 16, 17 songs. And, it's just been a great experience all around. And the Three Doors Down fans have been fantastic for us as well. So it's been a really, really enjoyable experience and very, very enriching.
Yeah. Well, from what I've seen online, the crowds are enjoying every minute of this tour. And what do you expect to feel on the last show, which I believe will be in October? A sense of accomplishment or that lingering feeling of wanting more or mixed feelings, maybe?
Well, who's to say, I don't know what I'm going to feel, in about 5 minutes, but I think it'll probably be a sense of accomplishment.
Right.
I set out to do something 32 years ago, and we released our first record 30 years ago, and the fact that I'm still standing and I'm still breathing is no easy feat. It's been a long, crazy trip, but I think that when I close this journal of my life, I'll be very appreciative.
Right. And when it comes to the set list, of course, it's heavily centered on the debut album and I guess the second one as well, but there are highlights from all your career, including songs from the upcoming album as well, right?
Yeah, we're playing 3 new songs in the set from the debut, or from the new Long Goodbye.
Okay. Punks, Elegante, what's the other one?
What Do You Need? And we're also playing Cellphone Jesus.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, let's talk about the few songs from the album, starting with Punks. It's like you're warning the new generation. Everything you're doing, it's because guys like me did it first, right? It's kind of like a A
Well, I don't
warning
mean
or
guys like
something.
me. I mean guys like me before me. Yeah,
Right.
it's really it really is. The I guess the real lesson behind the song is that just because you think you're doing something amazing doesn't mean you are. If you're not pushing yourself to the full extent of your craft or your creativity,
Right.
somebody's going to take that from you. And
Yeah.
it's your job to give your audience or whatever it is that you are putting out there 100,000% of it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're not going to see anything. It's and we live in a world, now with all these influencers and stuff like, these kids just think that that's going to be their career forever. Is I'm going to be an influencer. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
That's all this influencer bullshit's going to go once this AI thing takes over, and you're not even going to need it. So, what's your plan for the future? If you're a musician, how hard are you working at it? If you're an artist, how hard are you painting? How hard are you creating?
Yeah.
How often are you creating, and are
Yeah.
you creating the best of your talents? And that's really what the song's about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if AI is going to do the trick, but I'm sure this influencer thing is going to run its course eventually. And I keep my fingers crossed for it, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. And I mean, you certainly had your share of success, but also disappointment with the music business. Nowadays, it's a totally different game from when you started. But what advice would you give to a young musician who wants to survive in this industry? Is that all encapsulated in punks or?
No, no. I mean, I don't know if they'll even pick it up in punks. No, I think that really what it is if you're going to be a musician in this business, first of all, you've got to be playing shows at least once a week outside
Mhm.
of the town that you live in. You have to travel. You have to book your own shows. Don't hire a manager. Don't hire an agent. Just book shows. Call the venues. Play there. Open
Mhm.
up for whoever you can. Put your name out there as often as you can. Learn how to use AI. Learn how to use social media. Learn how to use this networking that we have, and abuse it. I mean, that's the thing. If you want to succeed in this industry at all, you have got to be on it all the time. And don't trust anyone. If you're not doing it yourself, somebody's not doing it for you. And as a band, if you are a band, be a band of brothers, be on the same page. If there's one member that's not on your page, it's going to stop things. So get rid of that member
Yeah.
because it will slow you down more than you can possibly imagine.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. And one of my favorite ones on the new album is Elegante. First of all, the title is in Portuguese, which is my mother language. Second of all, so catchy. I mean, I feel like this should be the next single if you're planning one.
Yeah, we think so as well. Yeah, it's a really cool song. I mean, it was inspired by we listen to a lot of interesting music on tour. Empire of the Sun is like one of our favorites. Of course, we've been listening a lot to the War on Drugs. We've been listening to the new Nothing But Thieves record. So
Mm.
that's something that we do as a band. And what we did with Elegante is we just used all of that kind of pop rock that we've been listening to, whether it's in 1975 or whatever, and incorporated it into our own style. And I love this song. I mean, I think it's beautiful and sexy, and it's got great movement to it.
Yeah.
And it's a pop track.
Yeah.
I mean, if it had any kind of opportunity in the world whatsoever with some money behind it, I think it probably would be lightning in the bottle track for Candlebox. But I'm
Absolutely. Yeah.
afraid that's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Different times, different times. If it
Yeah,
was the 90s, maybe. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I really like ugly as well, particularly the lines ugly people saying ugly things to pretty people doing the same thing. Is that a message to a specific person or not really?
It's just society. I mean, this is the world we live in. Everybody feels comfortable behind their keyboard. And that's not who we're supposed to be. I mean, we're supposed to be human beings and treat one another with respect. But it's very easy for us to, as a society, and that's not just Americans. It's worldwide. It's very easy to just say whatever you want to say without thinking who you might be affecting by that.
Yeah.
And whether you're discussing banning books at a school or critical race theory or anything like that, and people that attack you for that. I mean, it's just a constant.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. Like it's just
Keyboard
unfortunate.
warriors. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it really is just it's just unfortunate that we can't let one another live the lives they want to live. If you want to be a lesbian, be a lesbian. If you want to be trans, be trans. If you want to be a politician, be a politician, but just don't lie about it. Be a
Yeah.
good human being.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what's happening is that we're not being good human beings at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to agree. Yeah. And Maze is another cool song, very well crafted ballad, one of the highlights of the album for me. Tell me about that one.
Thank you. That's a song about my wife.
Oh,
She's completely amazed to me. I mean, and I mean, perfect example today, trying to get her to the airport because she came up to spend a week with me and I just don't know what she's thinking, and I'm like, I'm going to take the Uber with you. She's like, don't take the Uber with me. It's stupid. Just stay at the hotel. And then I stay at the hotel and she's like, I wish you'd have taken the Uber with me. Like, those kinds of things. So,
right.
and I think that's the difference between men and women, is it certainly in my understanding and the things that I've experienced is that um, as much as I think I know what's going on in my wife's head, I have absolutely no clue, but I'm crazily in love with her.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. And I will continue to find my way through that maze until I find that open part of her soul that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And that's what the song's about.
Awesome, awesome. And the ending of the album is quite emotional as well with Hourglass. I kind of feel like it was designed to be the last song of Candlebox. Is that the case or not?
100%. We
Yeah,
designed that song to be the closer of the album.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And on the previous album, Wolves, you had help from some very famous names from the 90s rock scene. I mean, Chris Cornell's brother
Peter.
and Christopher Thorne of Blind Mellow. Was that the case this time around or?
No, this time we just worked with a bunch of young Nashville writers. We
Hmm.
wrote the record musically as a band, Island, BJ, Brian, Adam, and myself. And then I went to Nashville to work with some young lyricists for the album because I wanted to experience something different for myself. I had never written with another lyricist,
Yeah,
and let alone the talent that's coming out of Nashville. And these are some very young, up and coming artists that I was excited to work with, and they helped me find exactly what I was looking for to say in these songs, and I'll be forever grateful for them because there's only so many ways that I can say fuck you and these guys helped me find other ways to say that, and so
right.
many ways that you could say I love you, and these young writers helped me find that in my voice.
Right. Very cool. Very cool. And speaking of bands like that, I mean, Blind Melon, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, even back to Andrew Wood and Kurt Cobain, it might be a complex issue or a complex answer, but what do you think contributed for so much depression, anger, and death of that generation?
Well, I mean, Seattle's basically the same latitude as London, England, so it's
Mm,
constantly gray, it's constantly rainy, it's constantly cold, it's constantly wet.
yeah.
And it's hard to live in a city like that unless you've got ways to escape it. Some of these musicians chose heroin as that way to escape, sadly, and it
Yeah.
took their lives. And others just struggled with depression and couldn't shake it. It was a tough city. I wasn't from there. I moved there when I was 14 years old
Yeah.
in 1984, so I had never experienced that kind of darkness,
Mm,
and so fortunately I survived it. But yeah, I mean, it was a hard city to move to, and it was a hard city to watch that happen, and obviously heartbreaking to lose so many young, incredibly talented artists from such a vibrant musical community. Um,
yeah.
just I mention it every night on stage, and we do Far Behind. These are friends of mine that I don't get to see anymore,
Mhm.
and that's heartbreaking for me, and I think for everybody that those musicians' lives that they touched, it's the same thing.
Yeah. I think one other aspect of it is the push and pull of the music business. I don't know if you agree, but the pressure to record a follow-up to a successful album, this industry can be quite unforgiving. If you write an album that's similar to the previous one, they say you're out of ideas. But if you change things completely, they say you're shooting in all directions, right?
Well, I think yes and no, but with the Seattle music scene, I don't think any of those musicians actually cared. Um,
Okay.
I mean, certainly Soundgarden, they weren't trying to be a popular band. They just were making music that they were making, and every single record that they did wasn't, it was extremely different than the one before. I mean, if you listen to Ultra Mega OK, as compared to Super Unknown, they're worlds apart. And I think that was what made that Seattle music scene so special, is that those musicians didn't care. But the pressures that you speak of from the outside, they can be crippling. And if you don't want to chase those expectations, or you don't feel like that's something you want to be a part of, how do you get out of that? Drugs. It's a very easy way to do it. Sadly, drugs that kill you. And that's, that's the darkness of, and not just the Seattle music scene, certainly New York, Chicago, London, everybody's experienced that in some way, shape, or form. We've lost tons of, incredibly talented musicians to drugs and alcohol.
For sure.
But the pressures, generally, the outside pressure, I've noticed in my world, that's not what affects me. It's the internal pressure of trying to better myself. And that's what I found was the difficult thing to manage.
Yeah, but I think, in your case in particular, eventually you earned the freedom to do whatever you want, especially after the reunion. On Wolves and Disappearing in Airport, for example, you seem to be writing for yourself rather than to please anyone else. Am I right in saying that? Or
100%, yes.
Yeah. And as a Rush fan, I can't not ask you this. Candlebox opened for them in the 90s. What was that like?
That was the greatest experience musically I've ever had. I mean, I grew up listening to Rush because of my older brother. I taught myself how to play drums to Neil Peart tracks, trying to emulate what he was doing. So to be able to tour with those guys was one of the greatest, most beautiful experiences ever. They were incredibly generous with their time. They took great care of us. They were super supportive, and mind-blowingly fucking talented. I mean, just the sheer talent in each one of those guys' pinkies was far superior than our entire band.
That's how I feel about it as well. And my biggest claim to fame as a Rush fan is that I attended the the Rush in Rio show. I was there.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Oh, dude, that must have been amazing. I mean, just watching that documentary was brilliant.
Yeah, it was wild. Yeah. And I mean, you must have a million stories to tell about your career, the ups and downs of the industry. Have you considered writing a book at some point, or?
Well, no, I've been asked several times. We're doing a documentary that comes out at the end of the year about, it's called Far Behind the Candlebox Story, and that really touches on everything that I've experienced. But I don't know if I'm willing to share that side of myself. That's something that I keep very close, and I'm relatively private about. And I certainly would have to get clearance from a lot of people in my career in order to write that book.
Right. Fair enough. Well, last question for me. What do you plan on doing after you play the last chord and sing the last word on the final show?
I'm going to sleep for a week. No, I have my foundation, Riptide Society, which will take up a lot of my time next year. And then I have a couple records I'm producing, and I have I'm launching a bourbon and a tequila over the next couple years. So there's a lot of things that I've got going on outside of the band that'll certainly keep me busy.
Right. Fair enough. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for your time. All the best in the last days of the tour.
Thank you, my friend. It's nice speaking with you. Appreciate you.
Cheers. Bye.
See ya.